I'd like to welcome our two panelists for the education discussion. Dr. Casey Crabill, who's our host here today. Thank you very much for that.
Sure.
And Jeff Scott. Jeffrey? But Jeff?
Either or.
Okay. Who is the school business administrator and the executive superintendent of Hunterdon County Public Schools.
Correct.
Right. Casey, I'll be informal with both of you today, if that's all right. Actually, I have to really give you a big thanks because, as you know, in doing many of these, the 12 series across the state, you were the first visit that I made to ask if you'd be willing to host. And at the conclusion of that meeting, you said, is there any place else, any other county college you'd like to work with? And I said, sure, we'd be happy to work with all of them. So as a result, I think 8 of our 12 are actually in community colleges across the state. So thank you for making all that happen.
Well, I think that makes sense in terms of what community colleges do. So it seemed a logical course of action.
And one of the things that I've been maybe surprised by, which I shouldn't have been, and maybe most people in New Jersey would be, is the wealth of resources that we have in county colleges. I mean, from beautiful facilities to programs that are evolving to really meet the times, the economic times. It's been, I've never been unimpressed, but I am even more impressed after seeing all this.
Well, one of the really exciting things about a community college, or as they're called in New Jersey, a county college, is that you have that kind of ability to be responsive, to be flexible. You have, parts of the institution would look very similar if you went across the state and looked at our transfer programs. Many of them would be quite the same. But when you look at how we establish roots in the community, that's where you begin to find responsiveness, differences, connections with business, connections with government, a response to local nonprofit agencies.
Mm-hmm. And you've got the latitude and the flexibility to be able to do that in the county colleges.
So far.
So far, so good. Jeff, tell us a little bit about Hunterdon Public Schools, because Hunterdon is a large geographic area.
Very large geographic area. We have 22,000 students, and we have 28 regular school districts, and we have then the Polytech, or the VOTEC school, and we have an Education Services Commission, which is solely not funded by any tax dollars at all. It's they generate their own revenue. Hunterdon's unique in that we have no K-12 school districts. We have 4 limited purpose regional high school districts of varying sizes. 2 very large ones, North Hunterdon, Voorhees, about 3,000 students in 2 high schools. And we have Hunterdon Central with 3,000 students on a campus setting. And then we have South Hunterdon, which is 7 through 12, which has about 360 students, very small. And then Del Val kind of falls in between with about 1,100 students.
So most of your districts then are K-8 districts?
Majority of the districts are K-8. We have a couple of K-6s, only a handful. And we have one of the smallest districts in the state, Stockton, with about 60 students. One of the unique features about Hunterdon is that in 2013-14, we have a new law in New Jersey that was instituted a year ago, interdistrict school choice. And in 2013-14, 20 of our 28 districts will be school choice districts. So parents will have the ability to select a different school if they feel that the school in where they live is not the right fit for their
So that's any
child.
public school, as long as they live in the county, they can choose any school in the county, or how does that work?
Actually, within 20 miles. So, for example, South Hunterdon was one of our first school choice districts. Very successfully, this past year, had over 22 students from Trenton, Hamilton, and maybe 1 or 2 from other ascending areas within Hunterdon County. Very successful. It provided some diversity to a school that didn't really have any diversity, and gave those students a different opportunity than they had in their home district.
That's based on space and limitations?
It's based on space availability. What the districts do each year is they identify by grade or by program, if it's a high school, how many spaces they have available. And then they open that up to parents, and parents then apply. They're applying at this time of the year. You'll see ads in the paper for school choice districts. And if they get more applicants than spaces available, then they have to have a lottery. It's not been our case in Hunterdon that we've had to have any districts have a lottery. The largest number of school choice students in our county is in Clinton Township. They have over 100.
Wow.
And
They're coming from primarily where?
they're coming from within Hunterdon County. And what the districts like about the school choice program is that these students are motivated students. So they're not coming to them with any kind of discipline problems or that kind of thing.
For the high achievers.
But the state is giving the district additional aid as a result, and it can be anywhere from $10,000 to $13,000 per student, depending on the particular district. And in Clinton Township's case, they get $1.3 million in school choice aid.
Pretty powerful incentive.
It's a very powerful incentive because it enables the district to do some things that they haven't been able to do because of diminishing resources.
Does that money then come out of the district, it's the sending district, if you will? It's the term that
No.
doesn't apply here, but
Well, in this sense, it does. State aid is established by the number of students you have on roll, and it's based on your enrollment October 15th.
right.
So if a district loses students to another district, that's that many less students they have to calculate their state aid. So in essence, they do lose state aid in that way. The receiving district, the school choice district, not only gets the additional school choice aid, but that school choice student is also considered an on-roll student or a resident student, and they get aid for the student as well. So it's
to their advantage.
yeah, which is why we'll have over 20 of our 28 districts in the program. They see the benefit, and there's adjustment aid that the state had established for districts that had declining enrollment, and that was to kind of keep their state aid flat. Well, the state this past year has decided that that adjustment aid is going to go away over the next 5 years, 20% a year. So our districts are looking at that school choice aid as a way to offset that loss.
Yeah. And I guess to tie this back to county colleges, clearly you have to be concerned as a dual county college, but not just with the graduating seniors or adults who may want to be coming back, but clearly looking at education even from a K-12 level, because ultimately many of those students may be your students.
Sure. I mean, our K-12 partners are really important to how we think about education, how we plan, how we build our curriculum. Jeff's been great in having me have opportunities to speak with the superintendents, for example, so that we can talk about mutual concerns in education, things that are coming down the pipeline. There's a lot of change happening in K-12 in New Jersey as districts move to implement new standards. We need to know how those standards will be implemented and what the outcome will be so that we can respond in terms of our curriculum. And we know from the county college standpoint that you know, anything we can do to support our K-12 partners is energy well spent, because we all have the same intention. We're a pipeline, if you will.
Yeah. Let's look for a minute at just at the, and again, kind of anecdotally based on what you see and then based on what you know from the numbers too, the quality of education and public education in Somerset and Hunterdon counties. Again, affluent districts, and we always like to say that education does not depend upon funding, but we do see the best schools, if you will, in the most affluent districts. If you go by that criteria, we should be doing pretty well in Somerset and Hunterdon counties, I would think. Right?
And I believe we are. We have some very high achieving districts. We have a number of districts that have been honored by the national, by our government as for their best practices, either whether they're a star school or they're a blue ribbon school or whatever. That being said, that doesn't mean there's not an area for improvement. There always is. I mean, we have a percent of our students who take the New Jersey Ask, which is the state assessment, and you know, we get back the information, tells us that so many are proficient and so many are advanced proficient. Well, we'd like to have a lot of more of those students in that advanced proficient category. So that's what we want to concentrate on. The state is moving in a direction where they're identifying 4 types of schools, if you will. And they did that with a recent grant application for the Race to the Top. The 4 types are focus, priority, reward schools, and then there's everybody else. which they haven't given a title to.
Okay.
We have a number of reward schools. We have no priority or focus schools. Priority
I assume, are the schools that are challenged.
priority schools are that's your lowest achieving schools in the state. Your focus schools are schools that have either a low graduation rate or they have a large minority achievement gap, where it could be a very high. The majority of the students in that district may be achieving at a very high level, but the minority students in that achievement are not achieving at anywhere near that level. So there's a big gap between their achievement and the majority of students in the district.
When we say minority, we're not necessarily being racial minority. You're talking about the gap, the achievement gap between the majority achievers and the minority.
No, we're talking about racial.
It is racial.
Yeah, yeah. Those different racial categories. So to deal with that challenge, the commissioner has reorganized the department, if you will, and he's created what are called regional achievement centers. There are 7 regions throughout the state now that have regional achievement centers, and with an executive director. There are only 6 executive directors, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Warren, Sussex, and Morris have no priority or focus schools at all, and that's a region. There's no reason to have a regional achievement center for that region if there are no priority or focus schools.
So rather than school districts in the traditional sense that we're thinking of with a superintendent and a school district, we should now be thinking them with this new terminology, the regional achievement centers.
Right. Well,
With the executive director.
There's an executive director for the Regional Achievement Center. Their charge is to help these priority and focus schools increase student achievement. And there's 8 turnaround principles that they want to address.
It sounds a lot more focused than we would assume any government department is. That may be much more of a business sense, a streamlining, much more focused on measurables and on goals and outcomes.
Well, I think that's true. I mean, we have a new teacher evaluation system, which 50% of a teacher's performance is going to be measured by looking at student achievement. And that's being piloted right now, going to go into effect for the 13-14 school year. There's also a principal evaluation system that's been fast-tracked, making sure that those people who are evaluating our teachers know what to look for.
Know how to evaluate.
Right.
And Casey, I know that's a concern that we've heard repeatedly as we move from throughout the counties, is that there's a lot of remediation required for your incoming freshmen, whether they come from even in 4-year colleges. That's a problem as well. In county colleges,
Sure.
Additionally.
If you look at the national data, typically you hear, somewhere around 70 to 75% of the incoming students need some kind of remedial work. When I look at it in our institution, and I look at the achievement data from the students who come in recently graduated from high schools, that preparation level, if I look at just English language arts, is much, much stronger than the national data would suggest. We only see about 25% of our students needing remediation in English language arts.
Mm-hmm.
Math remains a challenge. And part of that, you can think about, if you look at the graduation requirements in New Jersey, it requires 3 years of math. Many students finish that in 11th grade. And when you take a year off learning anything,
Right.
You're rusty. So one of the things that we're looking at, county colleges across the state are looking at working with their local districts to really identify students' skills at a more appropriate time, perhaps the end of 11th grade, and help students understand at that point, are you on track to be college ready, or is this a stumbling block for you? And if it is a stumbling block, how can we provide some support from both the county college and the school district in the senior year to address that skills gap? The biggest challenge for the county colleges is when students come in thinking they've done fine, bringing their shiny diploma, and the first message we have to give them is, you've got some work to do on these skills before you're really ready for college level work. Students don't want to hear that. Families haven't planned for that additional expense. So the county colleges think...
4-year colleges too have that issue.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. The difference really is that county colleges we don't select students. We welcome everyone. So I think our challenge is perhaps a bit broader. So we thought as a sector of 19 institutions, one of the best things we could do would be to leverage our thinking to help make that pipeline a little tighter so that students have a better sense, families have a better sense, and there is that year when perhaps students could do something to build those skill sets. And we're looking at lots of different ways to do that across the state.
Was that part of the thinking, do you think, in kind of transforming the Department of Education? Did that go into it at all, or was this being done for other reasons?
Well, I think our Commissioner Cerf wants to make sure that all students are career and college ready, career and or college ready. So he feels that there are some students who are not getting the education that they deserve, that all students deserve. And so he's trying a different approach. There's still going to be regional superintendent positions. Okay. And our region is identified as Mercer, Somerset, Hunterdon, and Union. Okay. Hunterdon County has no priority or focus schools, as I mentioned earlier. So that regional achievement director, if you will be concentrating primarily on the schools in those other counties that are priority and focus. And the challenge is to make sure that there's a collaboration between the regional superintendent and the executive director. Okay. Make sure that all their needs are being met, and that we're also looking at some of our other schools and making sure that their needs are met as well.
I think there's a lot of collaboration going on, and certainly I know you serve on the board of the county college.
Well, that's an interesting topic. I'm an interim county superintendent, and initially, because I'm an interim and not fully appointed to that position, I was told that I couldn't serve on.
Well, I don't want to be in the middle, literally, of any of this,
but I do serve on the Polytech board, and I'm really impressed in the year and a half that I've sat on that board, that with the collaboration that there is between Raritan Valley Community College and Hunterdon County Polytech. There's a lot of courses that our students are taking where they're getting college credits. I mentioned to Casey earlier this morning that we had a young man graduate last year with 17 college credits under his belt, going on to medical school. Essentially his first semester is finished.
Which is terrific. And I know that some high school students are graduating with certificates, actually.
We have a whole range of opportunities for students to kind of get a head start. Everything from articulated credit at the Polytech or at the Somerset County Vocational School through concurrent enrollment programs in lots of the high schools where the college works with high school folks to present students with an opportunity to take college English. Lots of students are ready. Whether they're coming here or not, we want them to have that experience under their belt. It supports their success in the future. We have a very intensive program that actually takes students in at the end of 8th grade. It is an Academy of Health and Medical Sciences. We've graduated 2 classes now, and those students, it's really interesting. They earn their associate degree from the college because our commencement's in May. Mm-hmm. And then they get their high school diploma in June. Wow. And those students have gone on to some amazing places. They're at MIT, they're at Johns Hopkins. One of them from last year's class has deferred his entrance to MIT because he's been named one of the 20 under 20, sort of a study in remarkable young people. Mm-hmm. So we're really trying to, I think, work from the concept of there's an educational pipeline, and it has lots of exit points for students who have lots of different goals in their life. But we all work better if it's tight and if we understand the expectations of the folks that had these kids before, and if we understand the expectations of the places where people hope to go, whether that's the expectations of an employer or the expectations of a transfer institution.
And can you talk to briefly the impact that the economy and the national economy has had on your enrollment here, both with people who may be looking to do college, coming right out of high school, and then also people who are having to retool and retrain for a job?
So there are so many answers to that question. First of all, one of the ways we see an impact in the economy is, we're funded in an interesting way, county colleges in New Jersey. The original statute contemplates funding that would be about a third from the state, about a third from whatever counties sponsor the institution, in our case Somerset and Hunterdon, and about a third from tuition. This year, tuition covers 60% of our budget because the public funding sources are just strapped.
Right.
Now, 60% tuition revenue, that's coming from families. Families are also strapped. Mm-hmm. So I think one of the impacts we're seeing is as our enrollment continues to go up, we have more students this year than we had last year, they are taking fewer credits at a time. Mm. And this is troubling for a couple of reasons. Number one, the federal government has just overhauled financial aid. Right. And put in place some real specific limitations in terms of how long a student can access financial aid over her lifetime in pursuit of a bachelor's degree. Those limitations will begin to impact people, are already impacting some people who have received financial aid in the past.
We should point out it's not just a question of slacking and saying, well, let me take a few courses here and there. I mean, many of your students are working full-time jobs or several jobs.
Absolutely.
Right?
I mean, part of the reason they're part-time is that, 80% of our students work, and among that group, over half of them work full-time. So a full-time job and a full-time load is probably more than you can manage even when you're 18 and have a lot of energy.
Right.
But the other impact that we're seeing is that if you look at the national research, whether you attend part-time or not correlates negatively with whether you graduate or not. Okay. So students who enroll part-time, and you can imagine, life happens, right? So you have to enroll for more semesters. And each time you enroll, you have to face the question, can I afford this? Can I do this again? And so you see a larger drop-off. And quite frankly, that doesn't bode well for businesses. It doesn't bode well for the economy. Because if you look at the world of work now, as opposed to when I came out of college, where you didn't really need a college degree to have a very good life with a very good wage, that doesn't exist anymore.
No, certainly not.
So students really need to be thinking about, and families need to be thinking about, how do they structure and plan for a higher education pathway that gets the student all the way through.
Mm-hmm. And I would think from your perspective, you don't certainly see your job finished, even though technically your job's done when they graduate from high school and they're out the door. Your task has become much more difficult in the public schools. Because now you're preparing students for so many different options.
Oh, that's true. And one of the challenges that Polytech has is to get the word out about its programs. And for years, vocational education was thought of in one way, mm-hmm. and there was one thought about who was eligible for vocational education and who should be going to that program. It's changed dramatically, and it's because of the efforts of our community colleges, our county colleges, and they're linking up with these VOTEC schools, offering all of these different opportunities for kids. That, quite frankly, because of diminishing resources, your local school district can't afford to continue to offer. Years ago, I was in a district in Bergen County. We offered auto shop. Most high schools did, and we also wood shop and metal shop. Those gradually went by the wayside. Auto shop was the last to go, and the reason why it went was we couldn't afford to keep up with the technology that was coming on board in terms of how to maintain these highly technological vehicles. So the vocational school in Bergen County was offering a much more robust program. Our program had become avocational, not vocational. Mm-hmm. And so we made the decision that we were going to focus on that. And I think the same thing's happening with Polytech.
And automotive technician is a great example. If you think about what it used to look like under the hood of a car, right? There were pieces you could take off and replace. Yeah. You could name them. When you lift the hood of a car now, it's a computer. And when you think about training people to work on that vehicle, the skills necessary expand exponentially. When I was in California before I came here, we had an automotive program at the college, and we were stunned to learn that of all the programs in the college, the textbook in automotive technology had the highest level of readability. In other words, it took the greatest amount of reading skills to be able to comprehend that textbook. And when you think about it, that just turns education on its head.
Well, it's not the old perception of, the guy down at the mechanic at the corner body shop or the corner gas station. Clearly it's a very technical, very skilled position now.
And it's what we tell students is, remember, it's a job that can't be sent anywhere else.
That's right.
People will need their vehicles attended to. So there's a long-term payoff to think about training to get the skills necessary. It's one of the reasons why when we were awarded a very large grant, fortunately last year from the U.S. Department of Labor, it's the very first curriculum area we attacked with the participation of the employer community in Somerset and Hunterdon County, of all the folks that work in automotive-related industries. We brought them together and used a process that draws from both supervisors and expert workers. What are the skills, but also what knowledge is necessary, what abilities, what traits, what behaviors, what soft skills, and built a curriculum which is now at the Polytech,
Right.
To make sure that students who come through that program, not just they can fix the cars, but they are the workers that our businesses are looking for. And I think that's really a key to where we're all moving in the future, to make sure that our workplace curriculum is driven by the places that our students want to work.
And we had this conversation at our most recent Polytech board meeting. It was about this program. And students that are in this program, when they graduate, they can sit for ASE certification. Now, typically, if they weren't, well, maybe Casey can help me out.
I'm not sure what it stands for, but it is the industry standard credential.
It's a standard credential for to work in one of your for one of your major like Ford or the Chevrolet automotive employer. ASE certified mechanic, if you will. And if that program wasn't there, these youngsters would have to go out and begin to work at an automobile dealership, work their way up, take about 2 years of training there before they could sit for ASE certification. This way, they graduate from high school, they move right into that status.
Which is also a big savings for the employer, because
Exactly.
they're work ready.
Well, and what we heard from the employer is if you took 20 of those kids and brought them in for on-the-job training, only about 5 of them would last, because they don't have the soft skills. They haven't had experience where they've had to deal with a supervisor. That's a special kind of soft skill to understand, how do I take constructive feedback and make changes to my work? How do I talk to a supervisor? How do I raise an issue that I need to raise to make my workspace functional for me? Or they didn't have background in safety information, or the ability to think about an employer's bottom line in a way that makes them a valuable employee. So not only does it save the employer's money, and it really enables people who want that career to have the best possible option to sustain that career, because it gives them a chance to develop those kinds of skills.
We had a number of students who were in that program attend the board meeting, because we had an issue about the instruction. They spoke extremely well.
Which is part of their learning experience as well.
Exactly, and they said, if the current teacher didn't teach that program, because he does have the ability for them to get ASE certification, they wouldn't be attending the program. So, and we're talking about probably close to 50 students who are in that program, both in the morning and the afternoon.
I want to focus for a little bit in our remaining 10, 15 minutes on some of the challenges that you're both facing. And Casey, I guess you're almost of success here, in that everybody would think this is a terrific time with these positions becoming more attractive to students or adults, with the economy bringing people in. The walls are, you're bursting at the seams here, but is that really necessarily a good thing?
Well, it's double-edged. I mean, bursting at the seams is a good thing, but if you're really bursting, there are some needs that aren't getting met. So, when I think about challenges for the college, I think about a couple of things. Number one, this is a really fine institution that's worked really hard to establish its reputation. It has a national reputation. sustaining that in a downturn economy is difficult. So how do you continue to refocus your budget to make sure that the dollars are going to exactly the right place? That's a challenge. I think we're meeting that challenge, but it continues to plague us on an annual basis. Facilities are in and of themselves a challenge. Part of the institution built many years ago, so there's opportunities to renovate space for more current instruction. Technology, you know, people say, well, it's a tool, you can do without it. You really can't. If you're going to send students into the current workforce, they need to be able to function in a highly technologically enhanced environment. So we're continually trying to figure out how do we enhance our classrooms to make sure that that standard is as high as it needs to be, both in terms of transfer and the workforce. How do we find enough space? Students want to come 7 days a week. I think if we scheduled biology classes at 3 o'clock in the morning, they would fill, because there's a drive and a demand, and our space in the sciences is limited. So how do you create a calendar, a schedule that works for that, makes the best use of the facilities that you have? When I talk to students about, you know, what do they see that the college could be doing differently or better, they always have opportunity or answers that are opportunities for more engagement. We have a really remarkable service learning program, but they want more. We have outstanding student leadership program, but we need more. So when you grow by 40% in the period of 3 years, it's a squeeze, and that's our biggest challenge.
And what about the challenges for the students? You mentioned the changing requirements for the inability to get funding and financial assistance.
Financial aid is a challenge, and sometimes people think, well, maybe in Somerset and Hunterdon County that's not so much of a challenge, but over a third of our students depend on federal financial aid. So that's a problem.
We no longer have the STARS program in New Jersey, is that correct? Or is
that's
that still,
not true.
That's still in place?
Yeah, New Jersey STARS has been changed, but students who graduate in the top 15% of their high school class can come tuition-free to their county college for the first 2 years.
It's terrific.
It's a great value, and lots of families take advantage of that. The change is in the STARS 2. So if those students keep their grades up and transfer to a New Jersey state school, they're entitled to a scholarship of $2,500.
Which is still a big help these days.
It's a huge help. I think for students, finances are a large challenge. Transportation is a challenge for students. We're on a lovely, bucolic campus, but it's very difficult to get to.
Yes.
So I hear from students a lot about availability of buses. Why doesn't the train come here? You know, that would be wonderful.
The train. Where would the train be?
Any train, any bus. How can we increase the ability of students to get here? And that really has prompted a lot of our work in both counties. We do a lot in the evening in Hunterdon, a lot in Bridgewater, to try to make it possible for students to get here. Other challenges for students, keeping up with their own technology, making sure they have the resources, making sure that they have the time resources necessary, balancing their work and their school life.
And Jeff, your challenges?
Well, they're similar. I mean, we've always said for years, you know, there's infinite needs and finite resources. The 2% cap on budgets is a real game changer. If not next year, in 5 years or 10 years down the road. And that's what I continue to harp on with our districts. You may be okay now, but where you need to have where are you going to be in 5 years, and what's your plan for getting there? Where are you going to be in 10 years? As I indicated earlier, we've got limited purpose regional high school districts. North Hunterdon Voorhees has 12 K-8s that send to those two high schools. What are they doing to work together? Are there ways that they can consolidate some services where they could be as efficient and not reduce the quality of what they're offering, but might save some dollars in the long run? And so we've been focusing on that. We've hired, actually I was able to lobby with the department to get some money to hire a consultant for the North Hunterdon region to take a look at the delivery of special education services.
It's a huge cost driver.
It's a huge cost driver, and you know, we have in Highbridge a 24% classification rate, and in some of the other districts a 12 to 13% classification rate. Why is it there's such a great disparity?
Right.
Is the program consistent throughout the region? Are we measuring students in the same way? So we're taking a real strong look at that. I brought out the curriculum director from the Northern Valley Regional School District in Bergen County. For 50 years, there's 7 K-8s that feed the Northern Valley Regional High Schools, and they have a curriculum director. For the last 50 years, they've had that individual in place. And why? Because the superintendent 50 years ago said, well, I get all these students in 9th grade.
Yeah.
I need to know that they've all had the same academic background when they come to me. So they don't have to remediate the students from one district because they didn't have that background. Our curriculum is the same. So we've been really focusing on that a lot. The other thing that we've been focusing on, and I have mid-year budget reviews, and they're coming up in November with each of the districts. And what we asked them to do is to take a look at what we call the 5 basic budget areas of focus. What are you maintaining? What are you doing to enhance? What kind of professional development are you providing? How are you protecting the investment in your building? And do you have any money in your budget or resources to plan for the future? And so we asked them to take a strong look at those. We give them a sample of what one district has done. You know, do you have adequate staffing for instruction, for example, in terms of maintaining? What academic programs are you providing? Have you evaluated those academic programs recently? Are you getting the student achievement results that you expected when you brought that program in 3 years ago? If you're not, why are you continuing to fund it? You know,
these are all pressures that are coming from the local schools, from the state, from the communities, from the parents. I mean, parents demanding the quality education.
they're demanding quality education, and but they don't want to see their property taxes go up.
Yeah.
You know, so and it's interesting in Hunterdon County. When I look at the average increase in property taxes from last year to this year, on average, it's less than half of 1%, even though there's a 2% cap. Now, that's not to say that some districts didn't go to 2% because they had specific needs, but overall, I think the districts in the county, they understand the issue, and they're doing their best to try to provide a quality education at a reasonable cost.
And to a large degree, people live in Hunterdon County because they want the education that's there.
One of the things about consolidation that's difficult is the local control issue. No one wants to lose control of their local school district. We have a lot of one school building districts. So how can they behave as if they're a K-12, even though they're not a K-12? So it's a common curriculum director, it's a common child study team director, it's pooling transportation, it's a common maintenance crew, for example, for the region, if you will. Take a look at those kinds of things. Technology, what are we doing in terms of technology? Should all the districts in the region be doing the same thing so that when those kids do get to high school, they have that same technological background? Those are all the things that we're talking about. But it's not easy because for over 100 years, everybody's done their own thing.
And that would all make your job much easier, I'm assuming, when all these things come to pass.
Sure. I mean, anytime our K-12 partners are improving and in better shape, our job is easier. And I think that that's true for the 4 years when it happens to us. Every time we improve a program, we know that students have a stronger experience when they transfer,
Right.
because we're all connected.
Right.
And we have somebody from Raritan Valley coming out to our next superintendent roundtable to talk about the science program here, the planetarium, what's offered, what kind of help can they give in terms of developing K-12 science curriculum. So there is a great
Trend towards collaboration.
Great trend. Yeah, I think it's been there for a while, but I think it's been the last couple of years has been even better.
And quick last word from both of you. Casey, I know there's a referendum coming up this fall, and every place we've been so far has said, we know exactly what we're going to do with the money if the referendum passes. I assume RVCC is no different?
Our board has a long-developed facilities master plan. We update that annually, and we expect that we would be able to make really important addition to our science building if that referendum were to pass, and if our county freeholders saw fit to support the match that's required. That's the direction we'd be headed.
Terrific. And then, Jeff, a closing comment from you, and anything you like. What do you think is the biggest change that you've seen this year, and something that you think is going to continue to inform?
Well, it's going to be very interesting to see how these regional achievement centers play out and what's going to happen there. The proliferation of charter schools and You know, we've seen some charter schools lose their charter
Right.
because the achievement just wasn't there. They weren't financially viable. So I think that's all going to be very interesting. We haven't identified who the regional superintendents are going to be. There's going to be 7 of them. We're told that that's going to happen in January. We have a chief academic officer who's going on to Montclair, and we don't know who's going to replace her, and she's been the driver behind the regional achievement centers. We had a deputy commissioner of education who left, and we had a chief of staff who just left to become president of Burlington County Community College. Dave Hespy, and
Yeah.
Dave was, you know, going to be a big loss
Yeah.
because they're very practical, understands the nuts and bolts, and who's going to replace that individual?
Great addition to our team. We're very happy about that.
Yeah, I know, and to our dismay.
Well, a lot of changes going on, and it's been a delight to talk with both of you about the programs at your school and in your district. So thank you very much, both of you, for being here today.
Thank you for the
We'll take
opportunity.
a short break and resume our program shortly.